everyone, and welcome to the SSPI podcast by Space and Satellite Professionals International. I'm Tamara Bond-Williams, Executive Director of SSPI. Today's episode is part of our series with ST Engineering iDirect, exploring how vertical markets across Europe are transforming through satellite innovation. Europe has long been a proving ground for connectivity, where diverse regulations, cross-border collaboration, and technical ambition meet on a continental scale. In our first episode, we looked at macro trends shaping the European satellite economy. Today, we turn to one of its most dynamic verticals, mobility, and especially maritime communications. Our guest is Andreas Nil, co-founder and managing director of MediaMobil GmbH, a company that's been connecting ships and offshore platforms around the world for more than 30 years. From pioneering early broadband at sea services to building a global teleport network and its own adaptive Multilink gateway, MediaMobil has evolved with every phase of maritime connectivity. Now, the company is moving into a new era of multi-orbit, multi-network communications, working with partners like ST Engineering iDirect to deliver high performance, lower latency, and greater flexibility at sea. Andreas, with that introduction, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for introducing me. So I'm happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much. And how did I do? Did I get that information correct, or is there anything you'd like to correct before we move forward?
No, all the information was correct, and we can go ahead.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to start here. You know, it's impressive to think that we've been doing communications on the sea for so long, and that you're such a pioneer in the field. You've been witnessing maritime communications evolved from narrowband, L-band, to today's multi-orbit architectures. And when you look across the whole timeline, what do you see as the turning points, the moments that fundamentally changed what was possible at sea?
Yes, when I started my career, I did some projects still at the university, and one of them was the development of the very first, what was called broadband maritime satellite service at that time. It was a service via the Inmarsat L-band geostationary satellite system. Mm-hmm. And broadband at that time was 128 kilobit per second, and it was called high-speed data. So since then, a lot has changed, and we then, when we founded the company, we in the beginning still worked together with Inmarsat. We developed different applications also for this high-speed data service. But then around the year 2000, the very first turning point for us was the introduction of Ku-band VSAT technology. So for the first time, we really could use smaller, cheaper antennas, more affordable, higher speed services, and with much lower cost per megabit compared to L-band services. So that was a real first turning point for us, and also for us here in the company. The second milestone was then the launch of Starlink, of course. So everybody is aware of Starlink, and I think initially Starlink was maybe not intended to provide maritime services, but very soon it was, of course, it became of interest for the maritime users, and I think Starlink was quite fast to roll out the coverage also to the high seas. So I think then, beginning of this decade, Starlink was definitely a real big milestone for us. And since then, of course, we have the real broadband services, I would say, much lower cost per gigabyte, lower latency, and all these advantages we know.
Yeah, I was chuckling a little bit at the idea that 128 megabytes per second is, broadband.
Yeah,
I
it was
remember
kilobit.
those days. That was a big deal.
Yeah, that's true. No, it was kilobit per second. So it
Yeah,
was,
thank you. That's right.
yeah, it was ISDN speed. So the
Jeez.
older people among us will still know ISDN. And yeah, but that was really fast at that time because all you had on a vessel before was just very low speed data, maybe 9 kilobit per second, something like that. So this is where we are coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's and really I really appreciate you walking us through that evolution. So much really pivotal history just in that description. So thank you for that. Well, okay, so you mentioned VSAT and the like, and I know that you guys run your own teleports, and you also are in the process of leasing satellite capacity. I have a note here: Eutelsat, Intelsat, and SES. Of course, Intelsat and SES are one company now. So what does that feel like now that you're in this very, very competitive and aggressively changing marketplace? How are you navigating the rate of change right now?
Yes, we as a smaller company, we always focused on very much on customized solutions, let's say, also
Mm-hmm.
on customized services. That was also always our strength. So we never had a set of standard services. And to customize your services, you need maximum flexibility also in the technology you are using to operate your services. Therefore, we decided very early that we would invest in our own satellite ground network or ground platform, if you
Mm-hmm.
like. And that really brings maximum flexibility and also security, very important nowadays, what you need to really tailor your services to the customer needs. And to have your own ground equipment and ground platform is, of course, not enough. You need then also the satellite capacity, which you can use in the most flexible way. And the only way to do this is to lease capacity from the operator, so raw capacity in megahertz. And this is what we basically did for more than 20 years. So to
Mm-hmm.
lease capacity, to set up our own teleport infrastructure, configure all the carriers on a carrier level as we needed them, basically to provide the services the customer were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are some other aspects to it. If you operate your own physical network, basically, you can also provide services where you really guaranteed the bandwidth, or where you can set different priorities for different applications or user groups. This is something which you can even not do today with the new LEO services. So it's still a very big advantage of GEO of VISA technology, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I forgive my ignorance, but it just hit me all of a sudden. We're talking about teleports, and of course, my understanding of teleports is typically these beautiful, gigantic dishes on the ground, right? And, they're such striking structures, and they're such a familiar sight in the satellite world. But then we're talking about maritime. So walk me through what that looks like. So you've got a teleport, you've got connectivity to the satellites in the sky. And so is it through the VSATs that you're able to have that connectivity back to the ship? Connect the dots for me, because I think I'm missing one.
Yes, we at least in the past, let's say around under the year 2020, I think we had a global own VSAT network,
Mm-hmm.
was all based on ST engineering, or at that time, I think iDirect. their VSAT platform, so-called evolution platform. So we operated around seven teleports, I think, at the end around the world, using more than 20 Ku band satellite beams. And from the teleport, typically large antennas, 4 meter or larger, you have the connection to the satellite. So you uplink your carrier to the satellite, and then the satellite directly connects to the VSAT antenna on the vessel. And the whole teleport operation is about to operate your carriers, configure your carriers, monitor the carriers, interconnect the carriers via the VSAT platform to the terrestrial network. So we had always the connectivity to the internet, of course. We also had dedicated connections for certain customers like government. You have connectivity to the public telephone network. So this is all basically located at the teleport.
Yeah. Okay. So then you have this ability now to make switches automatically between satellite and mobile networks based on what the conditions are. What does that mean for the user experience? And especially, how does it help the companies do things like cost control, which is, of course, always going to be a factor when you're thinking about, services?
Yeah. Yes, at sea, of course, in the maritime field, you have the situation that you do not have any terrestrial networks, no mobile networks, at least when you are outside of the reach or when you are not anymore near the shore. So, but then, of course, you have different maritime networks. The L-band networks are still there, the L-band systems like Inmarsat and Iridium. When you get closer to shore, again, you have some mobile network connectivity. And of course, then you had VSAT for a very long time, and now you have the LEO systems as well. So you need some interface between the onboard network on the vessel to connect this onboard network to all the different maritime communication networks. And what we developed in the very beginning when we started our maritime service business was a so-called Multilink gateway. And in principle, technically speaking, is a router device, and the device basically monitors all the networks which are connected, and then has a certain configuration to select the networks depending on quality, on availability, on throughput, and so on. And the advantage for the user is that he does not have to implement his own solution to monitor the networks, to switch networks, and so on. This is quite complex IT technology you need, and you need also quite qualified people to operate these kind of devices. So this Multilink gateway is a solution that this different maritime networks become very easy to use, so to say, from a customer point of view. And of course, you can then also configure your priorities for the different networks depending on costs or any other criteria users have. And these criteria are actually quite different between shipping companies. So some shipping companies have a focus more on the quality of the connection, on throughput. Others rather look at costs and so on. So therefore, the devices have to be very flexible and user configurable, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking through that that how dramatically that change of technology and the sudden accessibility of the LEO networks is impacting and changing the business. It had not occurred to me that the cost controls could be managed so granular. Okay, I'm not going to get the word out. So minutely. I think that's going to work for today. That That's very fascinating for me just to think about that the user themselves, obviously, depending on what the cost of the shipment is, and as you're moving goods and services around, and what's our profit margin, you want to find cost savings where you can, and so being able to make that shift, on the fly is kind of a game changer, and I'm really thankful that you're kind of mapping out the architecture, that there's a difference between how close you are to shore and how far out to sea you are. That's actually, not the kind of thing someone who stays very close to the ground often thinks about. Well, let me talk a little bit more about that, the change of technologies from geo to LEO, and the fact that you're making those connectivities on the fly. I heard you mention several different constellations, right? And of course, more constellations we hope are coming on board soon. So, are you, based on your technologies, are you able to connect to all of them, or do you have specific relationships with the different providers?
Technically, we are able to use all the different networks to provide all their services to our customers. Of course, you have certain restrictions because not all satellite operators are offering the same kind of agreements to use their services. So they have different restrictions. For instance, we are a direct partner of Eutelsat OneWeb, which means that we have a direct interconnect with the Eutelsat OneWeb network. And we can provide the services to the end users. In our case, we don't have a similar agreement with Starlink, for example. We will have agreements like that with other future LEO operators. So there are some differences how you get access to these services. But from a technical point of view, of course, we can use any of these satellite systems. This is also something which the Multilink gateway is enabling. So it can switch also automatically between GEO and LEO satellite systems. That's also useful because LEO systems have in principle geographical coverage everywhere, most of them, but they are not allowed to be used everywhere. So you have quite large gaps in the LEO coverage because of this regulatory restrictions. And in these gaps, you need to switch to GEO automatically. This is what the Multilink gateway is doing. And there is another restriction. Many LEO services are volume. They have a volume-based charging. And when you have fully used your included volume, then normally you would have to pay for out of allowance, and this is quite expensive. So many shipping companies do not want that. They want just a flat rate, like in the old VSAT days. And for instance, with an intelligent gateway like ours, then you can automatically switch from LEO back to GEO when you have fully used your volume. So this kind of integration is possible and is something what we are supporting. And of course, there are also more advanced solutions. Our Multilink gateway is not what you would call today a full software-defined WAN solution. It's a kind of SD-WAN solution as well, but it has certain limitations, and the full SD-WAN implementation, I would say, is a system which has central management, which can use even more criteria than what we are using in our Multilink gateway to control the traffic. So we are now also testing different more advanced software-defined WAN solutions, especially for maritime applications, which can control the traffic even on application level. So you can basically identify different applications, and you can send the applications depending on certain criteria over one network or the other. you can restrict bandwidth, you can prioritize, and so on. So these are very flexible solution. We are also we are also testing at the moment one system which has been provided by ST Engineering as well. So, and we are, our testing is not completed yet, but we expect that this kind of solution will also be will be kind of next generation of our Multilink gateway.
Yeah.
You are listening to the Better Satellite World, the longest-running continuous podcast in the commercial space and satellite industry. The Better Satellite World podcast is funded by the corporate partners of SSPI, Hughes, Access Intelligence, the American Space Exploration Fund, and Qvia. Have you heard about SBQ? Space Business Qualified is a popular online learning program for industry professionals designed by JSOA, SSPI, and SatProf. To learn more, visit spacebq.org. And now back to the Better Satellite World.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because obviously ST Engineering iDirect is providing or powering much of the ground infrastructure that you're building out. And so, well, first of all, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's their role in helping you navigate the rapid change, and in particular, you're saying you're testing out new capabilities that will further enable Multilink. Is this partnership like, are you building out new technologies based on the partnership? Is that how that's working?
Yes, in principle, yes. So we are working with ST Engineering, I believe, for more than 20 years already. So in the past, it was mainly for our VSAT platform, which is from ST Engineering. So when we started when we planned this investment, let's say, we did of course, we compared all the different solutions. We defined our criteria, which one to choose. And I can say after 20 years, it was definitely the right choice at that time. So, and we still use basically the same platform, of course, now with many software updates in the meantime, but it's a very powerful and efficient technology, both in terms of performance and also in terms of costs. And so we extended basically the infrastructure we have. And now with the new LEO systems is a little bit different because the current systems at least are proprietary systems, not from ST Engineering, but with this SD-WAN solution, this could be a solution also for us now to operate our future services. If it's then eventually the ST Engineering solution we will use, this is not decided yet. So it's an ongoing test program. We also have the satellite operators involved. So it's a quite large project. But we are very much looking forward to have a very good solution then at the end.
Yeah. You know, I do love hearing about these major collaborations, because it just feels to me that the rate of change and the opportunities, the new technologies that are emerging, to take full advantage of it really does require the partnership. And obviously, the long-standing relationship that you have with ST Engineering is a groundswell of trust that allows you to build effectively, and also that you know the technology, and so you can innovate on that platforms.
Yeah, that's true, and I mean it's as I think as I explained already, we will definitely continue to use the VSAT system also in the future, because there are many advantages of VSAT technology, and I think it will not be a standalone solution like in the past, but it will always be kind of companion for the new LEO system. So there is definitely a future for that. And besides of the this SD-WAN systems which we are testing now, there are of course also the new ground platform developments from ST Engineering, which are also of interest, because we have to further develop our teleport infrastructure, and we see also a lot of benefits not to use the traditional hardware setup, let's say, for the future. So these cloud-based solutions like ST Engineering is offering them now are also, of course, very, very interesting for our further network development.
Yeah. So when you think about that partnership, right? You guys having this longstanding partnership, you have the relationship with Eutelsat OneWeb, you have the relationship with ST Engineering, iDirect. Obviously, there's this push happening right now in Europe. We've been talking about it here at SSPI, a little bit about this European sovereignty and the ability to have capacity that that Europe manages and that is, available to Europe to use when needed. Does having these European native relationships enable you to navigate a little bit better the innovation landscape, and particularly to access resources in order to do this innovation that you need to do to stay competitive?
You mean, are you refer especially to Europe or what?
Specifically Europe. I mean, obviously right now there's a great deal of interest in making sure that Europe has capacities, right? That Europe can't be cut off from access to things just because some other nation doesn't want you to have it. And you were mentioning, for instance, that you don't have certain agreements with say, for instance, with Starlink, and so I imagine that number one, that access piece becomes really important, especially as you're thinking about European shipping and so forth, that you need to be able to count on access, but also there's some funds being made available towards innovative projects in Europe. And so having those partnerships in Europe, it seems like there's a benefit to that.
Certainly, that's true. I mean, what I see is an increasing awareness and also an ambition now in Europe to achieve this, what you call the sovereignty with space assets. I think that this looks clear to me. I mean, we have Eutelsat OneWeb as a major GEO and LEO satellite operator here with a global coverage at sea and on land as well. So, and there are also the plans now for the OneWeb second generation satellites. I think we will have very interesting discussions here at the Space Tech Expo in Bremen in November. I think there are also already ideas now for the second generation satellites, and we actually will have some discussions with Eutelsat OneWeb about that, also to discuss a little bit requirements as we see them for the different services we are providing. There's the IRIS² project now of the European Commission. And this is also very much let's say that the lead is with the European space companies and even with the telcos. So I see there is a lot of awareness that Europe has to become stronger in this area. I also see there are efforts to build more launch capacity. This is also very important, I think, for to launch satellites and many satellites also for the new constellations. So we are, for example, involved in an offshore spaceport project that is very interesting to launch small and medium-sized launch vehicles from offshore platforms, and we are providing all the data communications between the offshore spaceport and shore.
Wow.
Yeah, this is also a very interesting project. It's also based on a multi-link, multi-orbit connectivity, if you like. So we basically use all LEO and GEO capacities which are available to have a highly redundant connection to this offshore launch platform. Of course, to launch these launch vehicles, the whole launch procedure has to be highly secure. Europe is also investing in this to have more capacity for this kind of launches. So I think this is also a very important development, because there appears to be a shortage in launch capacity now to get more satellites into the orbit. So I think there is a lot of development in the right direction from my point of view. But I also want to note that it's very interesting. We talking about Europe and the US now. We have a first customer, a maritime customer, means a shipping company, and they are migrating now their existing LEO services to OneWeb because they say OneWeb is a trusted European system. So, and this is a very first customer who said, yeah, I know it's more expensive, but it's a European system, and I need an operator who I can trust. So I think this is this kind of considering the characteristics, if you like, of a communication network. This is also a new development, and this is also a European customer.
Yeah, that's really a fascinating shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to thank you, because the thought had not actually occurred to me when you started talking about launch. I was going to pivot and say, okay, well, let's pivot away from that for a minute, because I really wanted to talk more about maritime. But the thought had not occurred to me that actually it's the same conversation, because you're thinking about offshore launch, which is that's really an interesting. It seems like a growth opportunity, which is pretty exciting.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you a question. Just one of the things that we here in the United States, we are okay. Some of us here in the United States, let me be very specific, are always intrigued and interested in Europe's strong commitment to sustainability, and obviously, there are some sustainability topics to be had when you're talking about maritime, right? There's the need to optimize routes, monitor emissions, make sure that you're being efficient. How are you navigating that or contributing to that conversation with MediaMobil?
Yes, I think is to enable, of course, the information exchange, if you like, between the vessel and shore, so that from the vessel to shore and from shore to the vessel, you can send all the information you basically need to improve the efficiency of vessel operation, and to provide all information, be it about weather or other information you need to optimize your routing. So what we do is specifically to enable what we call this IoT application, so that you can connect your sensor network on the vessel, and you collect all the data. You have special software which is basically pre-processing the data and then for transfer to shore. Mm-hmm. And of course, we also enable cloud connectivity because many applications, especially for routing optimization and so on, are running in the cloud. So to let's say to support this kind of sustainability goals, communication and information exchange is of course the key, and this should be available everywhere. This is very important, not just where LEO is working. It should also be available where you only have GEO, and you need to optimize, of course, your connection, So how you are using the bandwidth, which priorities you assign to different information types. You have to manage this very well, that that you can exchange all the information at the right time, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I make the joke all the time. We in the United States are deeply concerned about sustainability, but we need to have a lot of creativity to meet sustainability goals because we are also very, very attached to fossil fuels, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, but having said that, it, you know, I think that lends itself to another piece of the discussion, right? Which is just the very, very vastly different regulatory environments that you play in, right? The nature of the high seas is that there's of course the law of the seas, so there's maritime law, but then you're interacting with several different nations all the time, and you're bringing technologies into those spaces. Uh, how are you navigating all the different regulatory rules and regulations that you have, and are partnerships, part of how you get through the haze?
Yeah, this is very difficult topic, of course. You have for geo for the geo VSAT services, it was relatively easy because there was a kind of established framework that for the provisioning basically of maritime satellite services in using Ku-band frequencies. So, and that was applicable and accepted more or less worldwide. So, if a vessel had a Ku-band VSAT antenna, and if it was part of the approved antenna plan of the vessel, you could go almost everywhere except special countries like India and so on. But for VSAT, this was not a very big issue. For LEO is completely different because certain countries or every country wants to license LEO services as soon as you are within the national waters and or within ports. And so basically, we need to know for every country what the licensing situation is, and then you have different situations. You could have, for instance, roaming agreements with license operators in the country. This is what we have in different countries already in place for OneWeb. You could just switch off the service when the vessel is entering the national waters. So there are many different situations you can have depending on the region and the world where you are. But of course, from an operator or service provider point of view, first of all, you have to inform the customers, the vessels, where they are allowed to use which service, and we are also offering to control the services in a way that we switch them off or we switch from DO to GEO, for instance, when a vessel is entering a certain region. So this is also, of course, an obligation of the service provider like us.
Yeah. And so that makes your multi-link capacity, all the more important because you have to be able to provide that in real time for your customers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. This is also what we call a value-added service, basically, to provide basic connectivity. This is, many providers can do that, but to have this kind of additional capability, so to say, to manage the service in a way that a vessel gets not into the situation that they are using a service illegally in a certain country, which could be very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
This is, of course, very important to ensure the vessel and the shipping company, the owner, that this would not happen if they use our service in this case.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. We're coming up, we're actually, I think, at the end of time, but I just want to just ask. So you've got this long history. You've got 30 years of understanding maritime connectivity and innovating in the space. As you look ahead, what's the most exciting development that you see coming down the road? And and particularly as we think about the future of European mobility in commercial and regulatory areas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good question. I like this question because I mentioned I started my career at the university. 5 years, I stayed there 5 years in an institute after my studies, and was involved in this R&D project. So, and we are still involved in different R&D projects. And one is about the development of the 6th generation mobile network, which should also have a fully integrated satellite component, so-called non-terrestrial network component. And this is, for me, the most exciting development we have in the world of mobile communications and mobile satellite communications. So, as I mentioned, we are currently involved in 2 different projects. One is a 5G project to develop satellite-based 5G services for automotive applications. And next year we have another project already looking into the future 6G network. And I think this is really exciting in a way, because when this is really when this would be realized, that you also have 5G or 6G services via satellite, then you would really have what we call unified and seamless services for users on land at sea, with a single terminal and a single subscription. So this would really be a real step forward. And for us as a service provider, it would of course create new opportunities to address completely new markets and to extend our service portfolio. So the worries we have are mainly from a regulatory point of view, that this coexistence of terrestrial and satellite networks, that if they would be really this coexistence, that it would be enabled with enough spectrum that you could really satisfy this increasing demand for bandwidth, because this will continue also in the future.
Thank you so much. I love that we start where we end, and we end where we started with the conversation of bandwidth, and it is a very exciting future that we're looking forward to. It feels a little bit like we're entering into finally maybe that Star Trek future we've envisioned. So,
yes.
Andreas, thank you so very, very much for being here. And when we get to that 6G, I hope I get to have you back.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I would be happy.
Absolutely. Well, and with that, this has been the second episode of ST Engineering iDirect European Series, a journey through the vertical markets that are transforming connectivity across Europe. Next, we'll look at, well, I don't know what's next. I'm gonna leave that as a secret. But I want to really, really thank ST Engineering for making this episode possible, and Andreas Nil for being here and helping us understand a little bit about how maritime is shaping up in the new world that we're in. And so this podcast is made possible by the support of SSPI's professional, student, and corporate members. We're especially grateful for our corporate partners, Access Intelligence, the producers of Via Satellite Magazine, the law firm of Clyde and Company, Hughes, an EchoStar company, QVIA, also a maritime company, and the American Space Exploration Fund. To learn more about SSPI, visit sspi.org and follow us on X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. New episodes of the SSPI podcast, including the Better Satellite World podcast, the Satellite Futures, Space and Satellite Futures podcast, and She Reaches Women in Space, are released every Monday. Subscribe at sspi.org/podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we now also have our podcast on our YouTube channel, which is SSPI Video, all one word. For Space and Satellite Professionals International, and for our producer, Ari Yates, I'm Tamara Bond-Williams. And for all of the professionals and companies doing all that is wonderful and special about our space and satellite industry. Thank you for all that you do.